Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 111 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. Today's board meeting is part 3 of a 3-part series. If you have not listened to parts 1 and 2 with guest board meeting host Dru Mack, you should go back and do that. Episodes 109, 110 are our 5 and 4 top Redpoint Pitfalls, and this is our number 3 most common Redpoint Pitfall.
So number 3 is going to be about links. Those linky dinkies.
Abe Lincoln.
Those Abe Lincolns.
Abe Lincolns.
Is what Tara
Shout
Kirshner
out
would say.
Tara Kirshner.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's about, doing the right links, the wrong links, letting the links, expire as well.
Yeah, and this is an interesting concept that Nate brought up.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about this a whole lot until we like put it into words. But it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So for anyone who isn't super familiar with like Redpoint tactics, what are links?
Links are so each route breaks down into a series of boulder problems, regardless of how easy they are. Maybe they're all V2 boulder problems. Maybe there's a V8 to a, series of V1 boulder problems. Who knows? Whatever it is, links are essentially just linking a bunch of sections of a route together. More often than not, we want to do it in the obvious spots first.
Checkpoint
like
climbing.
The checkpoint climbing. So from rest to rest, or from this rest to the top, or from the bottom to this rest, or from obvious sections. Like if the route is vertical and then gets steep, maybe I want to do the vertical section, then I want to do the steep section, and then you want to start linking overlaps. That's the basic idea of what links are. It's just putting together larger and larger pieces of a route so that you can eventually put the whole thing together.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like you're going to start by the links might just be going bolt to bolt, and then it might be linking two bolts together.
Yeah.
And the ultimate, the first, most climbers are trying to get to the one hang, which would be linking the route in 2 sections.
And that can be in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And in a lot of different
hang it
spots.
from bolt 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And tactics come into play a lot with that.
Totally. Yeah. And this is something that I think gets missed out on a lot. Just because...
Well, I just said obvious links. So I think
obvious links.
People go to the obvious links.
Yeah.
And past there, they don't think much about it.
Well, I went to the crux, I fell, and then I did the crux and went to the top.
Yeah.
I got all the links, I should do it next go.
I one hung this bitch.
I can't tell you. Yeah, I can't tell you the amount of times I've heard that.
Seen it.
Yeah. A super classic is in the Red River Gorge Spank. It's like 12 minus up to, V6 or so. Yeah. And then you're at the anchors.
Or Golden Boy, which would be the same exact breakdown.
Yeah. Do you think it's 12 minus to the boulder?
No.
Okay. It's going to kick you out of my house.
But yeah, so it's super common that people will link up through the 12 minus, fall in the boulder, and then maybe they do the boulder in like 1 or 2 tries, get to the anchors, and they're like, oh, I'm super close to sending.
Ready to go.
Yeah, but the difference between getting to the boulder and doing the boulder is enormous.
Yeah.
So at that point, what would be the best way? Let's just use this as an example. If you're climbing like 12B to a V6 and you're like, okay, well, I can climb up to the crux, I fall into the crux, and then I do it to the top. Like, how can they break that down better?
And we've talked about this before too, but the top-down method kind of comes into play there, where you can, if you've done it from the base of the boulder to the top, then drop it down a boulder too. If there's an obvious stance or rest spot a couple bolts below, try it from there. If you can't do it from there, then just go 1 bolt below the crux. But keep dropping it lower and lower in that sort of situation.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's kind of
That's
where
the easy
overlaps kind of come in play. Is like a lot of times I'm trying to high point a route where I'm trying to
low point.
Yeah, and then trying to low point. And the further those two things get apart, the ultimately closer you're getting to doing the route. Because you may low point from low on the route and high point high on the route, and at that point you're getting really
Do you like the
close.
term low point?
I feel like it can be misconstrued as something that like you hit a low point on
I
the
feel
route where
weird
you
about
did.
it every time I say it.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it can just be misinterpreted.
We should call it like the drop
easily.
point or something.
I mean,
don't
or
know.
just say you're like one hanging from lower.
That's too many words.
Because that's concise. Welcome to the board meetings.
See you guys.
So for instance, like for overlaps, just to like clarify a little bit better. So if there's like a 10 bolt route, what Drew is saying, like you would if you're high pointing to the 8th bolt, then your low point would be like, okay, I'm going to try and send it from the 2nd bolt.
That would be massive. First
Yeah.
of all, you would try to do it from, if you're falling at the 8th bolt from the ground, maybe go to the 7th and then go to the top.
and then you would slowly work
Right.
down lower and lower.
Just make the overlap bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
And it's important to keep doing that because by just doing the same exact link, especially if you're just, a lot of people get stuck in this like one hang rut.
Right. Always hanging at the same spot.
Exactly.
And to be honest, we didn't talk about this, but links to me also don't always mean doing the route from lower or doing the route, like that. Like sometimes I want to do the crux 2
Right.
times in a row.
Right.
And that linking that crux section, doing it twice, like doing it lowering to that same, where you started and doing it again has more value than maybe lowering 2 bolts and doing it once.
Totally.
I knew you were good at this. That's
Yeah.
why we brought you here.
That's a good point. I got a buddy in the new who is trying Skylar engine, which ends with a massive dyno.
Which is heinous.
Yeah, and he's not a tall guy
I
either.
love that route.
And he's got shorter arms than me, and so he has to all points off dyno.
Yeah, I do too.
And
Horrible.
me too. It's so hard. I abandoned it to go try and send 514s, and then I tried to come back after sending 514s and still haven't done it. So he was like, one day he was like, "Cool, I'm just gonna go up, and if I can nail this dyno 3 out of 10 times, that's a success." And the next time we came back, he was like, "I want to hit more than 50% for the dyno." And then the next day we came back, I forget what his goal was, but he hit like 5 for 5.
Yeah, consistency is important.
Yeah, and it was huge, and that was such a huge thing. And then the next day we went back, he did it. He one-hung the route, like did the dyno from something crazy low, which was like wasn't even his goal for the day. He was like, I just want to get up and see if I can do it, like 4 out of 5 times or whatever. Did a huge link, which you have a no hands rest halfway up the route, and he did it from the no hands to the top, which is like amazing.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things of like, few people would think like, oh God, I hope I can do this 3 out of 10 times. Yeah. But for him, this was the process. And like, he fully accepted like, hey, this is an all points off dyno at the top of, 110 foot route, like a massive route. He's like, I just want to make it a little better every time.
Yep. And I think that's really important because it's sort of highlighting that one person's low percentage move is another person's warm up. And if you can learn to make that low percentage move more high percentage, you've got a much better chance of sending. If you can make that low percentage crux, if you can make that hard section higher percentage, then you've got a much better chance of sending. And that's what Drew was talking about. That's what you're seeing with your friend on Skylar engine.
Totally.
Yeah. I just kind of went through that process on Waka Flocka in rifle, where the bottom is not so hard to a 2 bolt section that's quite difficult. And to me, instead of just keep lowering down a little bit further where it's really not so hard, I decided I wanted that 2 bolt power endurance section to feel easier and easier. So I spent a lot of time climbing it instead of climbing the 511 below over and over again. And that really helped me feel confident in climbing that section. And so regardless of how I felt coming from the bottom, I felt more confident in that that power endurance boulder section.
Yep. And you can do that on like relatively moderate sections of routes as well.
100%.
You know, like for instance, Cat's Demise in the Red River Gorge is like, I don't even know what I would call the grade, but the middle section of that route where it's slopey, compression-y sort of climbing is maybe what, 12B?
Mid 12, yeah.
Yeah, mid 12.
It's not the hardest, but it's hard enough that
For the route, yeah.
And it
Yeah.
tires you out enough for the upper crux.
Yep.
So when I first started trying that route, at the end of the day, I would just do laps on that little center section just to totally dial it in. And I figured if I can do like a 4x4 on the middle of this route, then I can breeze through it when it's red.
Yeah,
point
and then
time.
you can get up to the upper crux with a lot more tank in your arms.
the old
Right.
tank in the arms. That's how they do it.
Words.
Words are hard, Drew.
Um,
We put out millions of them every few months. So
For every good thing
you can
I
screw
say,
up every few. That's
for every
okay.
good thing I say, I'll say, one or two
You're adding value either way. You just keep
things
going.
that don't really make sense.
But yeah, I think those are really important points that, like, as far as links go, like just repeating the crux several times so that you feel more comfortable. Or
Yeah.
like Chris said, and I think it's really important, repeating the easier sections. Like, especially one thing I recommend to like all my athletes and like now anyone who's listening is there are plenty of routes to where maybe let's say it's 12A up to a V5. Like just do that 12A as like your second warm up every day and use your
totally.
cool down after your project. Because like you're just going to keep dialing that in.
Muscle memory.
Yeah.
That's what I did for Transworld. I would warm up on the 12C intro.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
That's part of my warm-ups.
Bummer.
That part is really fun. You guys are
It's such
crazy.
bad rock climbing.
No
Actually
way. That
like
part's
it.
so much fun.
But yes, I mean it's like free money. Like you can just like get free beta. Like you can dial it in. It's not taking away from your day. If anything, you're now going to have like that more specific muscle memory from just having gone up it to be even more relaxed.
Right. So another thing about links is that if you're scared of a link, you should definitely be doing that link.
Yes.
You have to do it when you send, for God's sake. So
Yeah. You can't avoid it forever.
you're not going to avoid it. So if you're scared of it, whether it's you're going to fall because you're going to be pumped, it's going to be difficult, it's scary because you're going to have to skip a bolt, whatever that link is that intimidates you, that's the link you should be looking for.
People definitely kind of skip that one often, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's hard.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't want to do hard stuff.
So to
We're
move
all about easy stuff, Drew.
That's fair.
Yeah. So to move on to the point that you got so excited about, Chris, is the idea of links expiring.
Yeah. I think this is really interesting. I hadn't thought much about it until Nate brought it up.
And this was something that like Sam Elias and Matt Pincus had kind of brought to my attention. And it's one of those things that like it makes sense, but I hadn't really thought too much about it. But, let's say you do a great link in the fall. Let's say it's like a hard boulder problem down
It's the
low.
ultimate proj.
You've been trying it for a while, and hard boulder problem down low to pumpy route up top, and you link it from just above the boulder to the rest of the route. And you're like, sick. So you come back in the spring, and you're like, well, I'm ready to Redpoint. And so you just start trying the boulder.
All you got to do is do the boulder.
Yeah,
right?
you just got to do the boulder, you'll do the route. But, maybe you didn't train enough endurance while you were gone. Or maybe you try that boulder for so long that you actually lose the fitness
Right.
necessary to do the giant link. So even though it really sucks, it's important to every now and then check back in and repeat those big links.
Yeah, totally.
Because, they do expire.
They expire.
Got a coupon for them.
You got a coupon for them?
Yeah, and they do expire.
Gonna
I
need to see the
what you
manager
were-
for that one.
I see what you were trying to do, but it didn't work.
Yeah, I know.
Drew's never coming back.
This is Drew's first and last board meeting.
Who said I wanted to?
But I agree. I mean, you have to keep up the fitness. Frankly, endurance comes and goes really fast.
Yeah.
If you're just doing the boulder problem at the bottom and that's all you're working on, then your fitness is probably tanking as we speak.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, if you want to make better links. Don't just make the same links. But then say you're having a bad day. That's not the time to try to be making better links. That's a sign of your links expiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Sometimes
you have to do what you would say in your mind is a worse link, but on that day, it makes more sense for what you're doing.
Yeah, or go back to what you've already done. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Repeat your links and get yourself back up to speed. Do you think there's a time period? Do you have any idea what that might be?
Oh, I don't know. But I think that does segue us into our next.
Well, actually, our
topic.
next is we're taking a break.
Okay.
Because we need to take a break.
Yeah. Is there a
And
time
then
for...
Yeah, is there a time period for like when do links expire? What's their shelf life?
I saw this just, I've seen this recently, if you have a major backslide, if you not
see
even
things degrading.
Yeah, exactly. If you are not even making the easier links, if you're not making the links that you've made before, and that's, especially if that's causing a lot of frustration, that can be really mentally hard for a hard route, and that can push you further away from doing it, and that's to me a huge sign of expiration.
Yeah.
Expiration.
Either move on or go back to training or start making those easier links again. I mean, I think that's the slowest way. If you see your links expiring all in a row pretty quickly, maybe it's time to cut your losses, go do something else, and train a little before coming back to the proj.
Yeah. I think it's an important point.
All right. Time for a break?
Break.
And that's going to be an official break until tomorrow, when you'll get number 2, our 4th in the series of the top 5 Redpoint Pitfalls that we see. And, I was going to give you guys a hint as to what number 2 was, because that's what I did in the previous episode, but it was such a nice clean break. You're just going to have to wait until tomorrow. You know where to find Dru Mack on the Instagrams at DruMack5. You can find Nate at Crux Padwell. You can find us at PowerCompanyClimbing.com and at Power Company Climbing on all the social medias, except for Twitter. I just don't even consider it social media because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
This time